Mortarion, Primarch and commander of the Death Guard Space Marine Legion, was forced to accept demonhood like many of his fellow traitor Primarch brothers during the Horus Heresy. His ascension to demonhood came to a climax right before the assault on Terra by the forces of the traitorous Primarchs. En route to the Emperor's last bastion, Mortarion and his entire Death Guard Legion fleet became trapped in the Immaterium due to the actions of the first captain, Callus Typhon, an already established worshipper of the plague god Nurgle. It was while on campaign with the Wordbearers Legion earlier in the Great Crusade that Typhon had learned of a different path for the Legion of Astartes to follow, a future where his hard-won but hidden psychic abilities would be a source of greatness instead of a taboo to be hidden from sight. The foremost chaplain of the Wordbearers, Erebus, inducted Typhon into the secret of the Seven-Pillared Lodge, one of the warrior lodges that had begun to spread throughout the Space Marine Legions in the later days of the Great Crusade. It was during this time that Typhon got a glimpse of what the Astartes could truly become if they shrugged off the yoke of the Emperor's ambition. Perhaps Typhon's revelation was instrumental in Mortarion's own fall to the ruinous powers. Perhaps Mortarion would have walked a dark path on his own. Either way, the troubled Death Guard Primarch saw a worthy leader in Horus, whereas in the Emperor he saw only a self-serving and pompous pretender who had stolen Mortarion's hard-won kingship in a single day, while engaging in hypocrisy concerning his own use of the warp. As the heresy reached its conclusion, Mortarion ordered his fleet to head to Terra with all hastes, intended for the Death Guard to join the other traitor legions in the destruction of the false emperor. By this point, Typhon served one master alone, and it was not his Primarch. Typhon had seen to it that the fleet's navigators were killed to a man, claiming that they were loyal to the Emperor, but reassured Mortarion that the warp gift he possessed would see them through their journey in the Immaterium safe and sound. Though he hated the concept of relying on what he considered witchcraft, even in one of his own Astartes, Mortarion was left with no other choice. The Death Guard fleet made transition into the warp, and in the process damned themselves to an eternity of war as the puppets of a foul and ancient god. In leading the Death Guard into the warp, Typhon had delivered them into the clutches of his new master, Nurgle, the Lord of Decay. The strange tides of the Immaterium were notoriously fickle, and during their voyage, the entire Death Guard fleet was becalmed within its shifting dimensional tides. As their warships lingered, directionless and without hope, the cloying influence of Grandfather Nurgle began to take hold. The Death Guard were subject to the terrible infections of the Destroyer Plague and Nurgle's Rot, as Nurgle's power managed to infiltrate the vessels of the Legion. It polluted the vessels themselves as easily as it did the transhuman warriors within. The virulent plagues infected the fleet while it drifted endlessly through the warp, making a mockery of the Death Guard's legendary resistance to toxins and contagions. The plague that came could not be resisted, something that terrified Mortarion and the Death Guard. It transformed them into bloated mutants, yet none could die, their own body being their undoing. None suffered more than Mortarion, for it was like being on the mountain top again on Barbarous, surrendering to the toxins, but this time without the Emperor to save him. Eventually, Mortarion could suffer no more, and gave himself over to chaos to stop the pain. Desperate, Mortarion offered his legion and his own soul to the ruinous powers in exchange for deliverance. Nurgle responded gleefully and took the legion and Mortarion for his own champions. As Mortarion at last swore his soul to the eternal service of the Plague God in return for an end to the ceaseless agony, Nurgle responded with his usual generosity. Mortarion was transformed into a demon prince of the Plague Father, the living embodiment of life and death and life. The Death Lord was at last worthy of his title. Mortarion left his humanity far behind, condemned to a deathless state of decay. From his back sprouted wings of tattered leather. His gaunt demonic face and rheumy eyes became entrapped behind his corrupted rebreather mask. A crown made of iron formed on his head that would forever poke through this tattered hood. Twisted and corrupted to resemble a morbid angel of death, Mortarion transformed into the Daemon Primarch of Nurgle. Mortarion would be the last Primarch to receive the blessing of demonhood by one single Chaos God, and would be the final Primarch to ascend during the Horus Heresy. But with that, I'll talk to you tomorrow. This was Gershwan with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first.